In this video, I'm going to share how I cleaned up some audio of vocal recordings for a song that I recently did. I'm not saying that you should be recording your vocals on a phone. This is just me sharing how you can clean those up if you happen to find yourself in that scenario. So the three methods that we'll go over here, the first two are going to be paid plugins. These ones are from iZotope. And then the third one is going to be free. And it's just some manual editing in Logic. So stick around if you want to hear more about that. Before we dive in, I'm Marcus of CradleCat. I make my own indie pop music, and then I also share things that I learn about production or other things about music here on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see more videos like this or just follow my music, go ahead and subscribe here on YouTube for more content, or go ahead and follow me on Spotify and Instagram as CradleCat. So let's dive in here. This is the audio that we're going to be cleaning up.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap.
And I should just clarify, if we're going to hear these lyrics over and over again, this song was something I did for fun with my cousins as a Christmas gift for my grandparents. So my grandpa loves duck decoys, so that's why you're hearing these lyrics. The first thing that we'll point out, I'll solo the vocal here. We're going to focus in on the noise that we're trying to remove.
If I were a
So you can really hear it at the beginning of the recording. I'll turn this up so that you can hear it even more. Yeah, that noise right at the beginning is what we're going to try to do our best to remove. And part of the reason that this is a problem is any of the noise that you're recording from your phone is going to be compounded by the compression that you're adding afterwards. So you can see we have two compressors here in series, and it's just going to bring up any of that noise that might have been picked up from your phone recording in whatever non-ideal environment it came from. So in this case, I was away from my studio environment and was also getting vocals from all my cousins. So I just told them all to send me iPhone recordings, and I did mine on a phone as well. So the first method of cleaning up the audio is going to be with our Spectral DeNoise plugin here from iZotope. And there are a few settings that we'll walk through. The first one is how we set it up to detect noise. The method that I'll use here, because I have a steady source of noise, is going to be the learn method. If it was a little less predictable, that's when we would use the adaptive mode, if there was changing noise in the background. But since I had a relatively consistent noise level, whether that was just a constant AC or just a relatively constant, background hum or noise like that, I can use the learn mode. And the other key factor in letting me use the learn mode is having a section of silence that I can feed that plugin. So that learn mode is basically you being able to tell that plugin, hey, this section of audio is what silence should sound like. The plugin then says, okay, I can work with that. And then it's able to strip that noise out. Whatever audio is in that spot that's supposed to be silent, it strips that out from the rest of the recording. So to set that up, what we'll do is I'm just going to select just that silent portion of audio to play, and we'll go ahead and click Learn to put it in learn mode. And now that has set the noise profile for the Spectral DeNoise plugin. So try to have a good couple seconds there of silence that you can pull from in that learn mode for these plugins using this method. Now, once I've learned it, you can, we'll just hear right afterwards the improvement. So almost nothing there. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off just so you can hear it. So that was before. That was after. So the almost more impressive part then is how it's fixing the audio when you do have sound coming in. So that's fine for silence, but let's hear what happens when it actually gets to the audio. So first, again, with it off, we'll hear it going into some of the lyrics.
If I were a decoy,
So that noise is still carrying over into the recorded vocal that I want to come through. So how do we separate that out and get a cleaner vocal? So with the plugin on now,
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack.
so we're really seeing a drastic improvement there with the audio quality, whether that's on the section that's supposed to be silent or during the vocal as it's recorded throughout the rest of it. So the other settings that we have here on Spectral DeNoise, we have this quality level here in the bottom left. It's going to affect how intensive it is on your CPU. So whenever I'm going to do this, I'm going to bounce the audio down afterwards, including that audio denoising effect, just so that it's not having to run that processing in real time afterwards. So I'll just set this to best and then bounce it afterwards just to get the best result. So I'll flip that over to best. The other settings here, the other main ones, the threshold is going to be your offset of the noise profile. So after we had it in learn mode, it recognized what silence is supposed to sound like, which gives it that noise profile that it's stripping. Threshold is you offsetting that by whatever arbitrary amount you set. And then reduction is going to be how much you're removing of that noise profile from the audio. So we can play around with those settings to kind of narrow in on how exactly we want that to affect the audio. I'll just move some of the knobs here so you can get an idea of what that does as we play through it.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap.
So you can see, especially as I was reducing especially as I was changing the reduction so that it was taking less of the noise profile out, you started to hear some of that noise come back in. In this case, the noise profile was probably pretty specific, so I didn't hear a ton of difference on the threshold piece or changing the reduction to remove more of the audio. So depending on your noise profile and depending on your recording, those will affect it a little bit differently. But just play around with those until you narrow in on a good balance of removing the things you don't want in the recording and keeping the things that you do want in the recording. The other piece for Spectral DeNoise is it's a little more versatile than the next one I'll show, which is the Voice DeNoise from iZotope. The difference here with the vocal piece is the Voice DeNoise is going to be less CPU intensive, and it's also in a less expensive package from iZotope. So it's more focused on vocals and dialogue. This next one that I'm going to show, the Spectral DeNoise that I just showed, that, from what I understand, can be applied to other types of audio than just vocals. So this can be to full recordings or old home recordings, that sort of thing, where it's maybe a little more tricky to isolate what's noise and what's not. So I'm probably not doing it full justice showing it with just vocals, but I did want to show you that option as well as the Voice DeNoise, which is what I have usually used. So thank you to iZotope for upgrading me to that next package of RX so that I could show you the Spectral DeNoise here in this video. The Voice DeNoise is the next one we'll show that I've used a lot for vocals, and it's just nice to be able to kind of compare these options and share them with you. So the next option we'll look at is from the next package down of iZotope's RX, and this is going to be their Voice DeNoise plugin. So very similar controls to what we just saw with Spectral DeNoise. Again, this one is just focused on voice. So the settings that we'll touch on, we have optimized for dialogue or music. Since this is a sung vocal, I'm going to choose music. The adaptive versus learn control, again, similar use case. If you have steady noise and you can get that section of silence we'll go ahead and use learn mode for that to define the noise profile. Otherwise, if it's more changing, like ambient traffic or waves, then you can use adaptive mode so that it's updating real time, changing that noise profile to match whatever it finds as that noise in the background. So just like before, since I have that section of silence, I'm going to define that silence here, go into learn mode and play it. Once we've done that, it's now developed a noise profile, and let's hear it back. And I can continue to refine that with the threshold and reduction levels just like before. So let's hear it go into the vocals and adjust those as we go.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack. If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa. If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause carols cook. If I were a...
So that took a little more messing around with the threshold and reduction there to get to a spot that I liked. But again, very high quality noise removal there. You can see that as I was moving up the reduction to take out more of that noise profile, I was losing a little bit more of that high end of the vocal, so it didn't feel quite as crisp. So that was a little bit of a trade-off that I'm trying to balance there on the reduction. And then the threshold is, again, just offsetting that noise profile for what it's recognizing as noise. So those are the things I was playing around with there after setting it in learn mode. I'll A/B compare all of these afterwards, but now let's go into that third method, which is something that if you don't want to go out and buy stuff from iZotope, both of which worked really well, you can still get some level of cleaning up those recordings just with some good old-fashioned editing and legwork here. So the next track that we'll work on will be just that. It's not going to be any fancy plugins here, which I do use, but it's just going to be some cutting, pasting, trimming, and EQing. So we'll turn off any of the denoise plugins. It's just my standard vocal chain here, and we'll get to work on it. So the first thing is going to be cutting things out and fading and removing as much as we can there. So you can see that noise right at the beginning. I'm just going to trim that out, and this is that breath in. I don't need full volume on that breath, so I'm going to fade it in right into that first word and just go through and take out some of those chunks of silence. So you can hear what I'm going to take out. You can hear how the compression is bringing that up, right? Especially in between words where it's even more noticeable. So I'm going to go ahead and fade that out. So I can fade that out a little more.
'Cause Carol's cookies.
And you can hear it even in between some of those words. We're going to get even more detailed and just start trimming this up as detailed as we can. I'm just using the hotkeys T and then I to go into my split mode there, or my scissor mode for my scissor tool, and then T and A to go into my fade mode. Just to kind of speed up some of your workflow there if you're doing any of this detailed editing. That can help make things a little bit quicker. Okay, so that's our pass at editing it, doing a lot of the trimming. I fast forwarded through that, but let's go ahead and hear that with as much of the silence cut out as we could.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack.
So you can hear, maybe I cut that part a little early there. So I didn't quite get the beginning of the word in. Let's go ahead and try that part here.
Quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap.
So we've edited out as much as we could there. The thing that I'm hearing as I'm listening back to this is, yes, it does sound much cleaner because the parts where the silence is the only thing we're hearing are now gone. But that noise profile is still carrying over on top of our vocal. And stripping that out is going to be the trickier part and really what you're paying for on those third-party plugins. So the way that we can address this, at least try to address it, is I'm going to go ahead and add an EQ before my compression here. And I'm adding it before compression because compression is going to bring everything up and kind of squash everything down. So if I can adjust it before compression, that's going to help me address it closer to the source than afterwards once everything's a little more flattened loudness-wise. So as we listen back to this, we'll see.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa.
We see that there's noise coming through on the bottom, and that can be any number of things from boominess of your vocal to any sort of humming or rumbling in the room. So we'll just kind of cut anything out below here. There's really nothing good that's going to come from that for most vocal ranges. So I'm going to high pass that. And then the next area we'll look at will be some of that noise that's in the upper or upper mid range. So I'll sweep through there just so we can hear it a little bit better and peak those up. And we'll try to dip a couple of those frequencies down where I think that the noise is more overpowering than the vocal in that particular frequency range.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap. If I were a
Yep, so one of them's right around here that I'm hearing, just kind of some fuzziness that we're getting. And then there was one a little higher up, so I'll listen for that as well.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure.
Yeah, so maybe right around there. We'll cut that out as well.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's.
Maybe there's one a little lower down.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap.
So that's where it's pretty tricky, is because there's a lot of presence in the vocal there, but there's also some noise kind of happening in the same range. So I'll do the best I can just to kind of adjust some of that. And now we'll hear it with the EQ on and off, and you can hear what we were able to strip out there. So again, it's not going to be perfect, but it's free. So that's the benefit.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause Carol's cookies may lure him in while Bruce is shooting trap. If I were a decoy. If I were a decoy.
So, that's about as good as I can do right now here for taking some of the EQ out, trying to reduce some of the noise and just find problem frequencies where I think that the noise is overpowering the vocal. Again, just like adjusting the threshold and reduction in the plugins that we were looking at, the Spectral DeNoise and Voice DeNoise, it's a balancing act of how much of the bad stuff do I want to try to strip out and how much of the good stuff do I want to try to keep there. So just try to balance that for each recording you're taking this approach on. If you're dealing with more variable noise or want to get even trickier, you can automate these EQ curves as you go and manually draw those in to try to get a more accurate more surgical approach for this free method of trying to take the EQ down. So let's take a listen to each of these and we can compare the results here. I'll also go ahead and turn off all the sends and effects just so we can get a really accurate look for this final comparison of the vocal, the dry vocal. So here's the original recording with no denoising done.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa Claus.
So you can hear the noise at the beginning and you hear it carrying through. There's also one little section that I just want to point out is already kind of distorted from the original recording. That's not going to be from the denoising plugins or from our editing. Right in there. So I just wanted to point that out as you're comparing these. The next one is the Spectral DeNoise. So let's hear that in action.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause carols.
So really great there. Very good at pulling that noise out. The next one is going to be the Voice DeNoise. So this is from the less expensive package of RX. Let's hear that.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause carols, cookies, my lord.
So again, very good. I'm still hearing some of that noise throughout the vocal, over top of the vocal, a little more than I was hearing with the Spectral DeNoise. And then the last one is just our manual editing.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause carols, cookies, my lord.
So again, we've cut out the noise completely in between. I could actually do the same thing. I could do the editing in addition to the denoising on the previous one, since it wasn't fully pulling out that noise profile as well as the Spectral DeNoise was. So I could kind of combine those methods and do some trimming there. But the other difference is I'm just hearing the denoising and the Spectral DeNoising especially do a better job at trying to pull some of that noise out over top of the vocal. So, cutting it in between, that's something you can do very well manually, but trying to separate that noise from the actual audio you want to keep, that's where those plugins really are worth the value that you're paying for them. So again, I'm just going to play my personal pick as the winner here, the Spectral DeNoise again, so you can hear that in action.
If I were a decoy, I'd want Santa quack, quack, quack. 'Cause carols, cookies, my lord.
Very clean. I'm really happy with that. Again, this was just from a phone recording. You can use these same plugins on any other recordings on nicer mics that maybe they were just done in a room that wasn't fully treated or properly treated. And these are some ways that you can clean those up. So if you're curious when you would even use this for phone recordings, some scenarios that this might be useful for other than just trying it out for fun is if you get vocals from a bunch of your friends in songs and you have them all kind of in a chorus chant or just background vocals. It might not be practical to get everybody recorded on a nice mic if they're in all different places. Having them just send you a phone recording for the fun of being in your song and you being able to clean that up so it still fits in your mix. This is a great way to do that. I believe Jacob Collier actually did that on Moon River with a bunch of background vocals from his friends across the world. And the other reason, like I said, it might not even be a phone recording. It might be a nice mic recording, but you're just in a room that has some AC noise or something like that. You can apply these same methods to clean up audio from those nicer sources. So just to recap, the three methods that we went over, first was the Spectral DeNoise plugin from iZotope. It did a fantastic job at pulling out noise from our audio, both in areas of silence and from pulling that out over top of audio that we wanted to keep. The next one that we went over was Voice DeNoise, also from iZotope. Also did a great job at pulling out noise. I think the Spectral DeNoise was a little bit higher quality there, especially from pulling out the noise over top of the audio that we wanted to keep. And then third was the free method, not quite as accurate and definitely not as good at pulling out the noise from audio we wanted to keep, was the manual editing, just using trimming, cutting, and EQ to pull out as much of that noise as we could on our own. So I hope this helps you out in some of your projects, whether or not you're trying to be cleaning up phone recordings or messy audio. Sometimes you're just in that scenario where you need to clean it up. So thanks for hanging out. Again, I'm Marcus, aka Cradle Cat. If you want to see more of this type of content, go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this here on YouTube. And if you want to follow my music, you can also subscribe here or follow me as Cradle Cat over on Spotify and Instagram. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.